Now on this channel, we do focus a lot on Volkswagens. It's basically the main theme at this point, but long-term viewers will remember that back in 2022, I picked up my all-time dream car, an Interlagos Blue E60 M5, or simply put, the one with the V10. It hasn't really featured a lot on camera since then, as we did all of the preventative maintenance jobs as you would on something like this. And for the most part since then, it's been pretty much flawless. Ironic, I know, for an E60. From the outset, this was never meant to be a fixer-upper type project like, say, for example, the R36, which needed a full restoration. But nevertheless, there has been a few cool changes since you've last seen it. One of those being the all-new Eventuri carbon plenum and V2 intakes. In fact, this thing actually spent the whole of 2023 in Luton, being the sole development vehicle for these parts. And a little side benefit of that is I even got to hear it sing on the dyno at 8,250 RPM. But as it is a 17-year-old car, there is always the odd checklist of tasks I need doing. So the plan for today is to bring you along and just work our way through it. And to make that process a lot easier, I'm pleased to announce that I've partnered up with our good friends at eBay again on this. As I'm sure most of you car enthusiasts know, eBay is the #1 place for all of your motoring needs. Whether it's some MOT or service items or just some used gems, you're always in for a bit of a treat on there. And better yet, with eBay Assured Fit, you can shop with confidence, as all you've got to do is enter your vehicle's registration and it'll bring up everything that fits your exact make and model, and worst case it doesn't, you've got 30 days to return it, hassle free. So yeah, I've stocked up my shelves ready to go. Links to all of these items will be down below in the description, so make sure you head over there and take a look. But yeah, without further ado, let's get cracking and brush up on those BMW DIY skills. Pretty secure, that. Bit of scrapage action going on there. It's so strange being underneath a BMW. Why was that a lot easier than a Volkswagen? Now, the first thing on my checklist for today's video is to sort out a vibration that I've noticed at higher speed when you just tap the brakes. It's not so much there when you go hard on the brakes or around town driving. So I don't think it's a warped brake disc, because you'd notice that all the time if it was. So I have a feeling it's that common BMW thing where it's the thrust arms that have, well, the bushes in them have gone bad. Apart from that, I've got literally zero complaints with the drivetrain on this. It drives beautifully. But yeah, let's take a look at what I've picked up. So here we go, a pair of upper control arms for an E60 M5, aka the thrust arms, like a lot of the BMW folks like to refer to them as. In terms of brand, I've gone for Lemforder. They make the OEM parts for a lot of BMWs, so should be a good quality. You can see on here Germany, which is always a great sign. I'll check the part numbers on the screen now in case you want to have a browse on eBay. And this, I'm hoping, is, well, the one that's on the vehicle is going to be the cause of the vibration. That seems like it has hardly any play in it. Even that isn't so easy to move. But yeah, let's have a look at the car itself, because I haven't been underneath an E60 M5 in quite a long time. That's the thrust arm right there. That's what we're going to be swapping out. That's where it bolts to. It's hard to tell, but it does look a bit perish, so we might be onto a bit of a winner replacing just that. The interesting thing is the anti-roll bar is completely mint where the undertray's covered it up. See, the gloss black paint is perfectly fine, but the ends where the undertray doesn't cover, the paint is starting to come off. Easy stuff to remedy, really, but you're looking at a relatively original car, I'm guessing. UK roads can be quite intense. These calipers were painted by a previous owner. They don't normally have. I think it's been done in F10 Monte Carlo blue with an M sticker. So yeah, just bits that could be refreshed. I don't normally let it get this dirty, but it's winter, what can you do? I do like to take it out for a bit of a drive, keep the battery charged. And then around the back, making all of the noise, the Eisenman Race exhaust is literally a set of back boxes, and it joins on to the catback right there. It's pretty much as I would have expected it. Any little exposed bits of metal like that that's not aluminium, it's gone a bit crusty, but that's just a drop link, so it's not really a big deal. Let me know down below in the comments as to the content you like to see on it. I don't really have any desire to strip it apart like the R36, but maybe an ice blast would go some way in making it just a bit nicer. First things first, let's blast everything with some penetration fluid. This one here doesn't look like it's going to be fun. There's a Torx insert in it. Smash the end of the T40 into there. Just starting already, this fella's come out. Finally. That is a horrible noise, isn't it, folks? Here we go. It's on the floor now. Now, unfortunately, there isn't actually much room to get that arm out until you drop the strut. Luckily, I've done that before when I fitted the lowering spring, so let's get that cracking. Now, the inner one here is actually the pinch bolt, so there's a nut on the other side. More squeaking from this E60 M5. I have got a replacement one. Need to get a spreader in there. You could use a chisel or whatever, but this works well for me on a lot of the VW stuff because it doesn't chew into the hubs. I have had that problem. Yeah, have a browse on eBay. You're bound to find something like this for not very much money at all. Okay, the strut should be open up now. Let's see if it drops. You can see there, that's how much the strut has moved. It's like a witness mark. Good reference point from when putting it back in as well. But have we got more space now to get this out? Yep, success. Right then, so a little side-by-side comparison of our control arm that's just come off the passenger side alongside the new one. Visually, they all look the same. The metal stamping and the quality feels equivalent. The OEM one does have this warning stamp on there. But as you can see, it says Germany there, so there isn't any branding on it, so I'm not too sure what exactly the OEM ones are. I know on a lot of M cars it's Lemford there. Yeah, we've definitely got a bit of cracking going on, and for quite a heavy vehicle this matters quite a lot to the drive. It's got a cracking on almost each element of it. What about this side? Yeah, that's what the new bush looks like, no cracking around the edges. Now, whilst the E60 does currently have an active MOT, worn suspension components like this can cause an issue around MOT time. This was the case for the R36, which had an advisory for front control arm bushes. And to help get your car MOT ready, eBay has actually set up a dedicated page with all of the essential parts that you need. There's also a nice discount of 20% until the 16th of April, so make sure you have a good browse using my dedicated link in the description and get what you need. There we go. Nice and fresh. Get a new nut on the end supplied with the kit, which is good. That's the strut back in place. Pinch bolt through. New one. Right, so we need to compress the suspension with this jack to simulate that there's weight on the bushes. It's not as perfect as putting it on a 4-post lift, but I don't have one of those. The car is starting to go light on the ramp now, so I think that's the limit of how much I want to push that up. High torque this. The other side was pretty much the same deal. The end nut had to be obliterated. But BMW, of course, likes to throw in a nice surprise because the upper bolt is too long to come out freely. So you do need to get a bit persuasive with that metal bracket. But it did come out eventually, and yeah, the bush on this side seems even worse. So with those arms done, it was time to move on to our next task, and that's an overdue brake fluid change. We're still running the OEM braking setup, but I figured some Motul RBF 600 racing fluid would be a good shout. And to make that job just a bit easier, I'll be using a pressure bleeder. I decided to be a bit cautious and order some new bleeder screws in advance as well, just in case the existing ones are ruined, because I haven't looked at them. And for the price, it's a no-brainer just having them as spares if not. And the reservoir itself is located under the scuttle trim on the driver's side. Cabin filters are underneath this. Here's a little look. Same again over here. I haven't done this in years. One side out and this side out. Now, I have read that some people use the software to bleed the DSC unit as well, but I'm just going to try a traditional bleed with the power bleeder. Got our pressure bleeder attachment. I'm going to pump this up to 20 psi. Now, bleeding brakes isn't the most exciting job. You open up a screw, let the old fluid come out, the new fluid runs through. So what I'll do is I'll chuck in a nice montage now of all of that happening, and I'll catch you folks in a second. Tight fit, or perfect fit, as you could say. Here you go. No coolant bottle to worry about. And pull straight off. Right, I think that's freed. These push clips are always tricky. What's holding it on? Nothing. And there we have it, the magnificent S85 without its plenum. As you can see, we've got 10 individual throttle bodies. Now, the reason we went through all of that teardown is we're going to be changing out the thermostat, which is located under here. The only reason I'm changing it is because it's showing up a code 2B59, which is related to it. But I've never actually had a situation where I feel like it's taking too long to get up to temp or it's too quick, and obviously taking into account the weather. But for the sake of how much a replacement one on eBay was, I thought let's just do it. It's a Marley thermostat. Now it's not OEM, but it's actually the same manufacturer as the OEM BMW one. It's just come in a different box. It's a similar situation to when I did the injectors. You may remember we changed all 10. It's actually a bigger failure point than rod bearings in my opinion these days, with the injectors just sticking open. And the thing is, nowadays it is a bit harder to get hold of them. Back then I managed to get the full set for less than £400 on eBay. I also picked up some genuine coolant, got probably more than I need to be fair, and we're going to mix that with some distilled water. That's because this actually comes concentrated, but it shouldn't be an issue. I got this dispenser as well, so we'll do 50-50. Right, so before we start, I want to drain the coolant out, and thankfully there is a nice little purge valve on the radiator. I'll show you it. Now, they're quite easy to spot. There's one over there, I believe, with the red cap on it, but most of the time when everyone's doing a thermostat, they just undo that one right there. There's even a spout underneath it if you want to put like a piece of hose. So we'll undo that and let it drain out. That'll be more of the top off. But we don't need to do a full flush, I don't think. Actually, change of plan. You know what? I've got enough coolant. Why don't we just do a full flush? And it's much easier to access this drain over here. Hopefully this doesn't break. Oh, wow. Yeah, you've broken it, mate. Right then, folks, so you joined me a couple of days later. Things have kind of escalated since that last shot you just saw. More specifically, in regards to the fact that there's no longer a radiator or fan in the E60 and this whole front panel area. And that's mainly due to the drain plug that was on the bottom of the radiator snapping in half, and the remaining bit in there being so difficult to retrieve that I've ended up getting a brand new radiator from eBay. So we're going to get to it in a second. I ordered it next day delivery, and here we are. Shows you the beauty of technology. Now, this radiator, I believe, is the original one that was on this car because it's dated 29 June 2007, which adds up to the production date of this thing. It is a 2008 registered vehicle in the UK, but the build was in 2007. So I'm pretty sure that's the original one. Of course, we have got a BMW stamp, and below it, it says BEHR, so that's the OEM manufacturer for these radiators. I tried pretty much everything in the limited space that there is to retrieve the remaining red plug. In fact, I've got the one out of there to show you what it's like. So it sheared pretty much here at the top when I was rotating it. So you can imagine all of this was still in there. But even despite eventually retrieving the debris, it did actually create quite a mess in there. And notice the actual, well, the housing looks a bit bent. If you look at that one there, it's perfectly straight. But the more pressing matter is the thread in there. It's all chewed up. So I don't know if in the past someone has tried to drain the radiator and then force the plug back in. I did consider re-tapping it and putting in a new screw. But then I stood back a second and looked at this magnificent machine and was like, no, we're not going to be re-tapping and trying to fix what's going on here. So I'll have a look at how much a new radiator is. Now, believe it or not, a radiator for an E60 M5 was just under £250 from eBay. I double checked all the part numbers. I've just measured them as well, so they're the same. It is different to a normal E60. It's a Marley BEHR, so I don't know how to pronounce that. They're actually a joint brand, so you can see the logo. It's in pretty much the same place. We just haven't got a BMW logo, which is fine by me. But yeah, let's get cracking with the thermostat. A lot of these coolant pipes aren't really going anywhere now, and we've drained the coolant, that's for sure. Let's undo this 10 mil here. Bunch of 10 mils. This one holds this centerpiece. Thermostat housing 1, 2, 3. On video, it probably just looks like a bunch of wires and pipes, which is pretty much what it is. There you go. Remove the 10 mils now. I've seen people remove it with this in place, but it's very rigid. There we go. Let's undo this banjo bolt. These are known to be a bit of a pain to get out. I've just tried levering it with some pretty decent force. But because we're replacing everything that's in there, the housing is all that we need to worry about. I wonder what it says on the official BMW instructions, of which I don't know how to find. VW workshop manuals I find quite easy to get hold of. I think it's BMW TIS. Maybe there's a puller or something. There you go. After all that, it just, well, at least it's out. Okay, all cleaned up, and I blasted some water through so there's no debris in there, because we don't want that after all of this. I'll just put a tiny bit of silicone spray on the rubber gasket just to help ease it in. That seems to have done the trick. Okay, so now that the thermostat's nicely seated, we can't forget that we've got two of these spouts which have two O-rings on each end. Now it is recommended to change these, so we are going to be doing that, but I've got a little hack for you folks. If you don't want to go for the OEM O-rings, which I found out are just under £2 each, so it's crazy for something that's so minute, you can get a pack of 15 on eBay for $2.99, I believe it was. All you gotta do is find the measurements for what it is, and apparently it's 22 by 2mm. All right, let's get one off. Easy enough. Looks identical. There's the original on the bottom there. It just looks like a refreshed version, doesn't it? Very reassuring that. And that's one completed thermostat ready to go back in the car. The best way would be to take this all off, but I don't know how to do that. So we'll go sideways. Now we've got the 3 bolts, the 2 longer ones at the back and the shorter ones at the front. Make sure you don't mix that up. They're not high torque, so don't get your impact gun out. Right, I think we're ready to put in our brand new radiator now. And not to worry, I did actually vacuum up the radiator support as it was full of wildlife. And yes, I did read your comments in the last video saying that my vacuum cleaner needs to go on retirement. I wonder where I can get a replacement from. All the plastics are mint on this car. Love it. How does it get around that pipe? It's quite a rigid pipe, that. Oh, there you go. Bit of force. Look at that. Beautiful. Now this is the original fan as well, which is good. New OEM crush style clamp. Matches all the rest of these. Get that in place in the same position. I had to get these pliers, which are, I don't know, they call them ear clamps, don't they? That coming off. And the other ends go into the expansion tank. Love that click. Now on the thermostat here, obviously I took this line off. It's got 2 crush washers on it. One is completely crushed and the other one is there. So we're going to take those off. One there, and then one is going to go on the bottom. So these are an OEM part. All that's really left is a couple of trim pieces, one which covers the radiator, and then there's another main slam panel made out of metal. But before I do that, I think it's best we actually go for a startup, because a lot of these pipes, especially say this smaller one here, it'll be covered up or you won't be able to see right to the connection. And I want to double check everything because it's all been off and it is a fair few years old. And the cool thing about the S85 is all I've got to do is turn the car on, let it run even with the cap off if you wanted, and it just self-bleeds. I remember with my 335i, I had to press the pedal hard down with the ignition on to force the electric pump to work around, but with this is a bit different. Bright blue, as it should be, as opposed to pink on a Volkswagen. I've got no idea how much we lost in this whole process, but there was a lot of coolant on the floor. Right, so this little red spout has come out, so the coolant is full, but once we start the car back up, we're likely gonna need to top it up just when we're bleeding the system. So let me just quickly get this all back together and let's hear some V10 noise. Let's go for it. Okay, so far it's looking good. There's not a single drip from any of those connections or the clamps that we replaced, which was more of my concern. The cooler level is still at the top. I'm hoping once it's up to temperature, the thermostat opens and then obviously there'll be a change in the level, but I'm ready with some pre-mixed coolant over there. These lines seem to be okay. That connection's holding up well. What a masterpiece of an engine that is. It just makes a change from all the usual transverse VW stuff I've got going on. Literal supercar looking engine, mate, that is. And a BMW. Right, so let's have a look under here. No leaks there. Right then, finishing touches. This little piece that sits on top of the radiator is very cool because it actually has the last 7 digits of your VIN. I suppose it's a good way to tell if the car's been crashed, because all of this would disintegrate. But I'm pleased to say, as expected, this car is all good. It's like Lego, my friend. Now we have our main slam panel, you could say. With all of our coolant endeavours now finally sorted, it was time to move on to our last few tasks in the engine bay. One was just simply refreshing the cabin filters, and the other was actually fixing an error with the AUC sensor. It's located in the scuttle trim, and after finding the correct part number and having a browse on eBay Certified Recycled, I managed to come up with exactly what I needed at half the price of a new one. And it even came with warranty. Right, cabin filters, I've never changed these, so it's going to be interesting to see what date is on there. It's an OEM BMW one, which is pretty cool. 31st of August 2013, so this is 12 years old. There's a fair bit of muck in here, breathing all of this in, unfortunately. But despite that, it still feels quite fresh in that cabin, so it's going to be extra fresh now though. This here's the AUC sensor. Twist and remove it. Here's a new one. Strut brace time. No hardware left over. New cabin filter. And then AUC sensor. Finishing touch. Get all these marks off this lovely carbon. Give it a bit of respect. Fantastic. Now, some of you keen-eyed viewers may have noticed that during this video, the brake calipers miraculously changed color. Well, whilst I was waiting for the radiator to arrive, I decided to get rid of that horrible faded Monte Carlo F10 blue situation and to return to a nice simplistic black, which is what the E60 originally came with. Now, I've never been a fan of painting calipers in place. I normally prefer to remove them, but I thought I'd give it a go this time. So I picked up some masking tape and black caliper paint off eBay. Enjoy this montage. Let me know in the comments which method you prefer, and yeah, I'll catch you in a second. Okay, so final task, let's get it lowered down, plug in the scan tool and see what codes come up. So the main codes I was looking for were 2B59, which is related to the thermostat, and 9C54, which is the AUC sensor. The thermostat one had thankfully vanished, so we didn't get coolant on our hands for no reason. And the AUC sensor was now no longer showing as existent, i.e. it's no longer a problem. We do have a parking sensor fault, but that's something I'm aware of. It seems to have a mind of its own. And somehow, whilst being parked, I now have a new SMG fault code. I did some digging online and it turns out it can be caused by battery issues, which is very relevant to my situation because I disconnected it whilst doing the work as I wanted to charge it up and see if it could be rejuvenated. It's the original 2008 one, and normally when I leave the car for a few days or weeks, I do get the increased discharge notice. Once I cleared everything and restarted the car, I had no fault codes. The parking sensor one will probably return, but that's something I need to sort. E60 M5 life, always keeping you on your toes, but believe me, none of this stuff makes me love this thing any less. Right then, so that brings us to the end of today's E60 M5 episode. It has been good brushing up on the old BMW skills. Let me know if you enjoyed it by dropping a like on it. Also subscribe if you're new. I also want to give a massive thanks again to eBay for sponsoring this video. It's awesome having a brand like themselves on board with the channel. All the various links to the items will be down below in the description if you fancy replicating it, if you're also an S85 guy, but I'm pretty sure a lot of what I've shown you today is applicable for a lot of BMWs, so yeah, pretty cool. And remember, with eBay, you can find the right part at the right price. You just need to enter your vehicle's registration and it'll bring up everything that fits your exact make and model. And shop MOT parts on eBay and get 20% off until 16th of April. Right then, take care and I'll see you very soon.